This week in IT, 60% of UK workers report tech overload, Microsoft is retiring Skype in May, and Teams get some new features. So stay tuned for all the latest news. Welcome to This Week in IT, the show where I talk about everything connected to Windows, Microsoft 365 and Azure. Before I get started, I've got a quick favor to ask you. Whatever you do, please don't subscribe to the channel or like this video. The channel's starting to grow really fast. We're getting a lot of subscribers, more than 11,000 now, and I'm starting to be recognized on the street. And to be honest, I can't afford police protection, so it's starting to be a real problem. So just do that one thing for me. I thought this is a really interesting story this week, and it featured on itpro.com. And this is a report by digital workspace provider Workspace 365. And of course, with these kind of reports, you always have to be a little bit aware of who's behind them, who's paying for them, and how the results have potentially been massaged to put out the message that that company wants you to hear. But I thought the results were interesting, and I thought when I read the article, I thought, yep, I can absolutely imagine that all of this is true. So the headline fact, or the pullout from this study, if you like, is that 60% of UK tech workers report tech overload. So what does that mean exactly? Too many different applications required to get their work done. And I thought, well, how many organizations, big, small, everything in between, have so many different applications and very complicated systems in order to just get very basic things done. Now, I've always been a big fan of simplicity and trying to keep things as simple as possible. If you've got a feature that does something in an application that you're already using, then why, look at another application, providing that the feature that you already have does everything that you need it to do. But very often that doesn't happen. Sometimes there's a lot of politics involved in who wants to use what application for various different reasons, but it can all get complex very, very quickly. One example of that is the battle between Slack and Teams, for instance, that I often see in organizations, or between Outlook and G Suite or Google Workspace, whatever they're calling it now, for email. Some people prefer one solution, some people prefer another. Sometimes we've got organizations using Teams for chats, something else for email, something else for document storage, and it becomes unwieldy really quickly. Now, I've talked a little bit about this on this channel before. Imagine you've got something like search. You want to be able to just search everything from one place. It doesn't matter, or shouldn't matter, where it's stored. Is it in a Teams chat? Is it in an email? Is it in a document? You shouldn't have to need to go and search in 3 different places to find really basic things. Now, of course, with systems like Microsoft 365, you've got the Microsoft Graph API, and in principle, it's possible to connect third-party systems into Microsoft 365 so that it can utilize that data, but that adds a whole layer of complexity. And even if you have the skills and knowledge to do it in your organization, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work well, or that it's even possible to do, depending on what those third-party tools are exactly, of course. So that is a real big problem, I think. And what's really interesting about the study is that essentially they're saying people often choose whether they're going to work in a company, take a job, or stay in a particular job, depending on the technology that's being used. So if you force, an application on people that they don't like, or you force many different solutions that make their lives complicated, then very often that talent is going to look elsewhere. And we know in the current market, it's really difficult to find people, good people, to do anything at all. So I think that organizations should be doing everything they possibly can to make sure they keep that talent. So a whopping 2/3 of British workers want tools to be simplified and consolidated, and 4 in 10 employees avoid using their company's tools, and nearly 2/3 have even considered quitting over overly complex IT systems. And interestingly, remote and hybrid workers seem to be in an even more difficult situation, and a third have cited tech overload as one of their biggest challenges in the working day. So I think there's a real gap in the market for consultants to really go into organizations and help them to simplify the tools that they have, to reduce the number of apps that they're using, and to really simplify everything to try and make people's lives easier. I mean, I remember back in the day where you just had maybe a very small number of applications that you were able to use on a device, and sitting in front of a computer to do stuff was pleasurable. Even working was pleasurable. Today it just seems constantly switching context between different tools, different apps, information all over the place that you can't find, search that only sees one particular silo of information, and then you have to use another tool to search a different silo of information, and it's chaotic. And designing simple, beautiful systems that work for people is really difficult. But I think there's a real challenge here for organizations to really get their IT departments to try and simplify everything, because it's not just a tech problem that needs to be solved, it's a human resources problem that really could benefit organizations and help them to reduce stress levels, improve productivity, and all importantly, retain employees. Let me know what you think in the comments below about application complexity and application sprawl in your organization. Is it a big challenge for you to manage all the different applications that you have to use every day, even that your IT organization has to manage? And what are the biggest challenges with simplifying applications and the number of applications that you have to use in your organization? The consumer version of Skype is going away on May the 5th. Now, probably this might not come as a big surprise. It's been a long time coming. Microsoft has really taken Skype, and it was developed initially by a small startup, I think, in Estonia. Quite often what Microsoft does, of course, is they take something that was really good, and guess what? They kind of spoiled it. So, Skype was the kind of de facto video calling application many years ago. Now it's just kind of, another kind of thing that Microsoft have destroyed. And, well, not really sad to see it go, to be honest. It's a bit of a pain. So what Microsoft is saying, that you'll be able to use your Skype login if you're using the consumer version of Skype, for your small business or whatever. You can take that login and you'll be able to log into Microsoft Teams, and your contacts or favorites and all those important bits of information that you had in Skype will be available to you in Teams. Now, if you're using Skype for business, then you don't need to worry about this. While support for older Skype for Business servers is ending, I think in October 2025, like they would for any, on-premises server product, Microsoft is releasing a subscription edition of Skype for Business, much like it's doing for Exchange Server. So you don't need to worry about this. You're just going to have to make a decision. Well, are you going to move to that subscription edition of Skype for Business, or are you going to move to Teams? If you decide to not carry on using the consumer version of Skype, if you don't want to move to Teams and have all your data exported automatically to Teams just by logging into it, you'll be able to export your data from Skype and use it wherever else. If you have some credit for Skype Premium, or you have some existing credit for dialing numbers, then that credit isn't going to go away. You'll still be able to access Skype and use it, at least for the time being. Let's talk about Microsoft Teams a little bit. So there's been a whole load of updates in February, and I just wanted to highlight some of them. So you can now add bots to individual group chats and schedule messages and channels. Notifications can now be customized, and I think what they mean by that is you can choose where the notifications appear on the screen. So before it was always kind of in the bottom right hand corner, and now you can choose where they appear. App discovery has been improved. So I've had a quick look, and I think what they mean by this, correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you go into apps, it's now divided into kind of, applications, devices, and workflows. I don't believe that was there before. So it just divides the applications into categories, essentially, so that you can just more easily navigate what you've actually got there. If you use webinars and Teams town halls, then the intelligent recap feature is now available for those. And if you want to share those details, you can create a link and share that with participants as well. Apparently, organizations can now enable Copilot for Microsoft 365 for organizations that have multiple tenants, and the default policy for transcriptions is going to be set to on for new tenants, so you won't have to go and configure that separately. If you found this video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, because it helps get the video seen by more people on YouTube. Of course, I was just joking earlier, I'm not quite at the point of needing police protection yet, but could be quite soon. I'm going to leave another video on the screen for you now about Microsoft 365 and the potential geopolitical risk with everything that's happening in the world. Check that video out, some really interesting stuff there. But that's it from me for this week, and I'll see you next time.